He was a hard-working civil rights leader whose growing success in Mississippi led to his assassination in 1963. His name was Medgar Evers. I'm Stephen Yoder, and this is Abbreviated Bios. Medgar Evers was born on July 2nd, 1925 to James and Jessie Evers outside Decatur, Mississippi. His mother, Jessie, was a strong Christian and valued education so much that she kept Medgar and his brother Charles in school even through cotton picking season. In 1942, Medgar quit high school and joined the Army during World War II. He was assigned to a segregated transportation corps in England and participated in the Normandy invasion in 1944. The Army was segregated, but Evers found a certain amount of personal freedom during that time. He served under a sympathetic white lieutenant. He dated a French girl on the continent and was treated just like everyone else by Europeans. Yet, after returning home after the war, he could not sit in a restaurant in his hometown of Decatur, Mississippi. Evers finished high school after returning from the war. In 1946, Medgar, his brother Charles, and three friends tried to vote, but were turned away. Charles wanted to force their way in, but Medgar advised it wasn't worth it. They returned home. In 1948, Evers enrolled at Alcorn College, a historical black college. He earned a bachelor's degree in business administration in 1952. While there, he met Merle Beasley, whom he married in 1951. They would have 3 children together. After graduation, to Merle's dismay, he decided to remain in Mississippi. He took a job with a black-owned Magnolia Mutual Life Insurance, one of the few places in Mississippi where a black college graduate could get a professional job. They lived in the all-black town of Mound Bayou. Medgar was recruited to join the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. Soon he was not only selling insurance, but memberships in that organization. Evers also became the president of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. The group took direct action to try to force the equal of separate but equal. The biggest action was the boycott of gas stations that would not let blacks use the restrooms. The group passed out thousands of bumper stickers with the slogan of "Don't buy gas where you can't use the restroom." By 1954, Medgar Evers was the NAACP's first field secretary in Mississippi. They didn't have one before this because Mississippi was considered a lost cause, but Medgar Evers didn't think so. One way Evers made a difference was investigating white supremacist crimes. In 1955, he investigated the Emmett Till lynching. He was able to find 2 new witnesses. That same year, he also investigated the murder of Reverend George Lee and a couple years later, Lamar Smith, who had encouraged blacks to vote. In 1958, Evers was beaten up as he tried to integrate a Trailways bus. In 1961, he was beaten by police outside of a court hearing for the Tougaloo 9, the first civil rights demonstrators in Mississippi. He also became an advisor to James Meredith when Meredith was attempting to become the first black student at Mississippi State, which he succeeded in doing. Evers had been urging the NAACP since the 1950s to start suing Mississippi over issues such as segregated schools, parks, movies, libraries, and playgrounds, but they didn't file their first lawsuit until 1962. On May 20th, 1963, Evers had a televised speech on Mississippi TV, which had been unheard of previously, to argue against restrictions on blacks in Jackson. He spoke of that place where Negro citizens are refused admittance to the city auditorium and the Coliseum. His children refused a ticket to a good movie in a downtown theater. His wife and children refused service at a lunch counter in a downtown store where they trade. Whether Jackson and the state choose change or not, the years of change are upon us. In the racial picture, things will never be as they once were. After a sit-in that turned very violent at a Woolworths on May 28, 1963, Evers stated that there needed to be a massive offensive against segregation. He denounced Jackson's mayor for promising to desegregate public facilities and then failing to do it. That day, a Molotov cocktail was tossed into his carport. On June 7th, he was almost run down by a car. Evers' problem, according to John Salter, was that he was the sort of lone wolf who traveled lonely and mighty dangerous trails. He was simply, and in every sense of the word, a hell of a brave pioneer deep in the wilderness. On Tuesday, June 11, 1963, Medgar arrived home from a rally around midnight. After retrieving some T-shirts from his car, he was shot in the back with a high-powered rifle. He was trying to crawl to the house when Murley and the kids came out and found him. He was taken to an all-white hospital, the first black ever admitted. He died 50 minutes later at the age of 37. Medgar Evers was given a funeral both in Mississippi and at Arlington National Cemetery, where he was buried due to his service in World War II. The FBI was quickly called in to investigate. Fingerprints on the murder weapon led to Byron de la Beckwith, a true white supremacist. He was arrested and tried twice in 1964, each trial ending in a hung jury. Back then, it was almost impossible to find a white person guilty in those racially segregated times. Beckwith thought he had gotten away with it. He even bragged to people about the murder over the years. Beckwith was wrong. Over the years, Mississippi began to change. Murley had moved out to Claremont, California, but continued to press for action on the murder. 30 years later, a new prosecutor took up the case and a mixed-race jury convicted Beckwith in 1994. He died in prison. Medgar Evers is considered one of the most important civil rights leaders of the era. His widow Murley eventually became a civil rights activist herself. Their home was designated a National Historic Site in 2007. Thank you for listening to Abbreviated Bios. Please subscribe if you like this sort of program and hit like if you thought it was done well. I hope you're around for the next Abbreviated Bios.